Welcome to Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions, the podcast where we dive deep into impactful and inspiring conversations with amazing professionals who've turned their challenges into stepping stones for success. I'm Johanna, your host, and each time we meet, we'll explore the stories and journeys of remarkable individuals who are PAs, doctors, professionals, mothers, and mission-driven changemakers, from the halls of the hospitals to the hearts of our homes, and into the communities we serve. Join us as we uncover the challenges, triumphs, and everything in between, and see life through each other's perspective. If you're seeking fulfillment in your career and life, I've got something special for you too. Download our free guide on how to be a fulfilled provider. It's packed with tips and insights to help you thrive while balancing the many hats you wear. And for all those parents out there dreaming big while raising little ones, check out Little Evie's Big Dreams children's book series, available now on Amazon. These heartwarming stories inspire kids to chase their own dreams, just like you're chasing yours. So grab your favorite cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and get ready for uplifting conversations that will leave you inspired and equipped to make a greater impact. Let's jump in. Hi, friends. I'm so excited to have you guys today on the Medicine, Motherhood, and Mission podcast. This week, I'm really excited because we have Erin Murray. She is a nurse practitioner and a old friend from college as well. Wow. And so we happen to keep in touch somehow through social media. And I've seen her recently have her own practice that she has started in functional medicine. So we'll be talking about that. She has a lot of experience in primary health care and internal medicine, but now switching over to functional medicine, starting her own clinic, her own practice. It's really exciting. And so thank you so much, Erin, for joining us today.
Well, of course. Well, thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Yeah. And so let's start off with a little fun question, like, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for fun.
Yeah, sure. Okay, that's great. I always love to start there. So, well, my name is Erin. Like I said, we met in college, so it's been several years ago. But I am a wife. My husband's name is Mark. I have 3 kiddos, 11, 10, and 6. So we are in fun, busy, crazy, fun kid stage of life, which is really fun. Whenever you ask what I do for fun, gosh, that's actually a good question. I am usually chasing 3 kids around, and I actually think that's really fun. And so I guess at this stage of my life, it's probably going to be whatever my kids are doing and my family is doing that is going to bring joy to me. We love to travel. We do travel quite a bit as a family, and so that's really fun. Occasionally, we leave the kids and sneak away, just my husband and I, but that's more rare than common these days with the stage that my kids are in. But we love that. And then, they're in busy stages right now. They're in sports and they're in school. My daughter just did a spelling bee. We're in all of the throes of just life with kids at this stage. And so it's fun. It really has been such a great season of life.
Yeah. Yeah, that sure does take a lot of the time. And as you said, it is fun being involved in their joys and their triumphs and victories and all the things that come with it.
It really does. It brings me a lot of joy to see them light up. And so that's a season. And it may be forever. Who knows? But it's certainly a fun season of motherhood that I'm enjoying. With the kids.
Yeah. And so how did you end up in being a nurse practitioner and functional medicine? How did that journey start?
Sure. Okay. That's a great question. So I mentioned having fun with the kids, but certainly I have a whole nother, this is exciting. And this is what we want to talk about today. So I went to nursing school at Oral Roberts University, which is where we met. I graduated a long time ago. I'm going to date myself here. I graduated in 2005 as a nurse. And I jumped right in. I moved back to Texas, which is where I'm from, jumped in as a cardiac ICU nurse and just did bedside nursing for about 6 years in the hospital. And I loved it. It was really fun. I learned so much. I loved bedside nursing, during which time I decided to go back to school also. The town we're in has a college that's there, and they had a nurse practitioner program. Some of my friends were doing it. It was kind of it was exciting. It was a challenge. It was also something I really felt like the Lord told me to do at the time. So I went back to school while I was working, became a nurse practitioner in 2012. So I have been a nurse practitioner now for, 12 years, which then, goodness, it seems, it's amazing how fast time goes by. So I've been an NP for 12 years. Shortly after I became a nurse practitioner, I also became a mom. So I mentioned my son's 11. So I will say most of my nurse practitioner career, I have juggled jobs. I have juggled families. I have quit. I have moved. I have been a stay-at-home mom for short seasons. I have always kind of wanted to work in a little bit in some capacity. So even when I had newborns, I was doing something, it seems like. So my jobs have done a lot. And because of the transition, I have done multiple different things. I worked in primary care. I had a job as at a rheumatology clinic for a couple of years. I worked in physical medicine for a couple of years, which was like in a chiropractic's office. So there was a chiropractor. I was more on the medical side where I did joint injections and trigger point injections and things like that. So I did that for a couple of years. Primary care was not the majority of my career, but did that for probably at the end of my just traditional career. I was in primary care and enjoyed that as well. Certainly that always has lots of challenges because it's just a really broad, anything can walk through the door. And so,
for sure.
Yeah. But this transition really happened, let's see, about a little over a year ago. So and I feel like it was just the Lord brought this to kind of a head. There was some things maybe already brewing in my spirit, some frustrations that I felt like I was having in just the traditional medical world, whether it be, and the frustrations are more this, I guess, in a primary care setting, I was running into a lot of where I was on a time constraint. So even if patients wanted to dive deep and figure out what the root cause of their situations were, I didn't really have the time to do that because I was there was a lot of regulations on me and on my time. Insurance paying has kind of something to do with that. And so there were some frustrations with just, not being able to really do what I wanted to do for some of my patients. I also just feel like this was somewhat of a divine appointment that the Lord gave me. I just had a conversation with a friend who is a pharmacist and had been for a lot of years. We've always been friends and always just chatted about medicine and motherhood and how we juggle all of that. And she herself had kind of taken a shift from traditional medicine in pharmacy to a more functional approach. And she went back to school and she started seeing clients kind of individually out of just a functional approach. So this conversation I had with her wasn't really anything special. It was just a quick, I don't know, maybe 15-minute conversation that really started the wheels turning and my questioning, curiosity. I started kind of doing my own homework, mentioned it to my husband that I was just thinking about functional medicine and what if I went back to school? What if I started kind of made a shift in my career? And this all started about a year, maybe a little over a year ago. So that kind of propelled me into going back to school. So I actually started back to school in March of this year, 2024. To become functional medicine certified. And so, but simultaneously, a couple of months into school, I also started taking clients on. And so I have from March, and like I said, I'm still in school, started seeing clients in about May, then worked through the summer a little bit, really took on clients in August of this year. And so doing a little bit of both. So I'm juggling learning with seeing clients. And it has been a fun, exciting journey over the last year of just opening a practice and also being in school, just it's been a juggle, which is probably the story of my life, but it's been a really fun thing.
So one really interesting thing is from a conversation, it sparked something in you. And I love that because that's like what this whole podcast is about conversations that will spark that hope, spark that dream in people and encourage them. And I love that that's how your new journey of like starting something like that's not easy, that and amidst having 3 kids and, you know, all the other stuff that going on, that you still had this desire to start this new journey and take on something completely new that required you to go back to school, which is always so hard after, you know, becoming a mom and getting busy and in life. And then you've already done your master's in education for nurse practitioner and to start something again. Yes. So that's really neat. That's really neat.
And I love that. I just feel like that's how the Lord leads our lives so many times. Yeah. I look back on it as just kind of a divine appointment where I think I always want to be sensitive to those divine appointments, whether they may seem divine in the moment or maybe they seem mundane and just casual. I think the Lord leads us in that way. And so I feel like such a gift and such a blessing that he has just, and even just the thoughts that were started in that conversation is what kind of progressively led to more and more study and prayer and really kind of soul searching of my own heart. Is this really something he's putting on my heart to do? And it's kind of turned into what it is today. So I love that. Such a good perspective on conversations, and exactly such a good thing.
Yeah. You never know what will come out of a single word of encouragement that you give to another person where you receive and where that seed will get planted and how it will grow.
Yeah, that's good. So true. So powerful.
And so that's amazing. And so given functional medicine, you know, it's kind of, it feels new, but I don't think it's new. It just feels new to a lot of people because it seems like we're hearing more about it. But what is functional medicine? How would you define it?
Yeah. So my just take on what that is and what that looks like is more discovering, identifying, uncovering, and resolving root causes of diseases that we deal with. And I'm talking primarily chronic diseases that we deal with. And disease is even a generalized word, maybe chronic symptoms that you might be having. Right. I feel like I'm trending away from the word disease or diagnosis or things because I think sometimes those box in what we might be looking at or dealing with. Whereas symptoms may be more kind of what we're talking about. Now, usually they're a big picture of a disease or a diagnosis. But I think what my approach to functional medicine is if I am looking at a patient with chronic symptoms, why are those there? What caused those? And is that something that we can resolve? So it's a little bit of a puzzle piecing that I get to do, which I love. I think, you know, in chatting with clients, usually there's thousands of things that come up, but how do we put all of those together to really identify the root cause of that? And once the root cause is identified, can it be reversed? And then usually that ends up being lifestyle modifications, which I love as well, because then I think this is such a neat demonstration of the way our bodies were made. Our bodies were made to live and thrive in health. And if we can identify the why behind what is going on, most of the time they can be reversed. And usually it's lifestyle modification. Now that doesn't mean there's not a time and a place for medications or even supplements or certain interventions to be made. But so many times, if you really get all the way back to the root cause, usually it has to do with our lifestyles.
Yeah. So how do you delve into getting to those root causes with patients though?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like diving into deep waters.
Like, it is diving into deep waters. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so I will say every patient is really different. Every scenario is very unique. I ask a lot of questions and I am looking for patterns, looking for trends, looking for, I mentioned I'm still in school, so I feel like I had some training as far as like maybe even puzzle piecing in my brain that allows me to ask the right questions, allows me to figure out if I'm suspicious of maybe a nutrient deficiency, I might be able to poke at that a little bit further when it comes to interviewing. And so, the beginning part of it is just a really in-depth interview with clients. I mean, usually it starts with a questionnaire. I have a questionnaire that is lengthy. And then it comes with an interview, and basically it's just kind of a conversation between me and the client, and asking questions that may or may not seem relevant in the moment to what they're dealing with. But usually it's this pattern that I'm looking for of where did this start? And some are much more obvious than others. Some are much more complicated than others. And some of them, I'll leave the interview and think, man, okay, where do we start? And then usually kind of sitting down, just looking at all of my notes, all of my thoughts, trying to literally put puzzle pieces together. I think that's actually a good analogy. Is like it's like a puzzle. It really is, and each little component becomes a piece of it. Maybe there's lab work, and if that's available to me, then that usually is a puzzle piece. And so, kind of where does that fit? How does that fit with the symptoms? How does that fit with the history? Or even like, how does that fit with stress levels? How does that fit with their job or their family or their dynamics or their diet or, their childhood even. So,
yeah, that's, we definitely don't have time to do all of that in our usual clinics.
I know, we don't.
And so, I think that's why the shift is for direct primary care or functional medicine. And that definitely I'm seeing that trend. Where providers they're trying to make those changes, right? Because how else can you spend so much time to delve into each patient's complete history, right?
Yeah.
Which is what you're doing to get to those root causes. Because, you said, you're looking for the symptoms, and that's what we do in medicine. We're treating symptoms. But that's what we're doing. We're treating the symptoms, and then you're looking at the symptoms to get to the root cause and trying to treat that root cause. And so definitely it's something we definitely are struggling with in medicine sometimes, I feel like.
And I think from a patient standpoint too, not everybody is looking to resolve the root cause. And I think that has to be part of the first initial conversation is, what are the goals of the patient? Because oftentimes functional medicine approach to healing is really slow and the results are not fast. And so I think that has to be either well understood and really a true desire of the patient, because it's not for everybody. And I feel like that's okay. That's kind of across the board. It's okay if that's really not the goal of every patient or even every provider. I think there's some times that quick fixes really are essential for maintaining your life. And I think that there's that you have to handle that with care. You have to be very sensitive to what is the situation, how quickly does this need to be resolved, and how much is this influencing and affecting their immediate life? Because really, to get to the root cause is they didn't get there overnight, and so to resolve it is not going to happen overnight either. So that has to be kind of a part of the story and a part of the picture as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, coming from hospital medicine, we're treating those acute exacerbations of whatever disease is underlying. And those are critical measures that have to be done. And so, but for patients to get to those points, how does the patient avoid that? How does the patient, help in the process? And it's a partnership, right? As you said, it's a partnership between the provider and the patient, because it has to be a mindset change. And we're, just a interactive change in their health behaviors, right?
Right. And that requires a lot of commitment, and sometimes they're capable of doing that, and other times they're not. And so I think sometimes figuring out how to make lifestyle changes in the world that we live in is sometimes the trickiest part of my job. How do you change your diet when your life is busy and you're on the go and you have kids and you're having to eat at restaurants and you're not able to cook at home? How do you make some of those, implement some of those really functional changes in the society that we live in? And so it's a tricky thing. Like I keep going back to the puzzle analogy. I was like, this is another piece of the puzzle, is like, we live in a stressful, quick, fast-paced environment that demands a lot of our bodies and probably is a lot of the culprit of why we are where we are. But how do we live a healthy lifestyle in the world that we live in today too? That becomes a really big picture, and every patient's really different. And so,
it really is interesting because, just thinking about that, even something simple as sleep is something that a lot of us may be deficient in because of our lives are so busy. And so, and as moms, of course, that starts once you become a mom.
Exactly.
And so, there's so many different things, but it's trying to see how do you get to there? And so how do you work with your patients to get through those processes?
Yeah. So, this is a good question. Yes, I have a couple of things that are kind of, in place with most of the patients that are somewhat across the board. I usually talk through what you just mentioned, sleep. That's a huge thing we talk about. Diet, movement, stress reduction. There's usually some very fundamental things that if we can make some changes in our lifestyle regarding some of these things, that for across the board, I work individually with patients to really find a healthy balance in all of those things. Perfection isn't necessarily the goal, but a lot of times if you make some changes, you will start seeing benefits in your lifestyle, start feeling better. And then there's a lot more motivation to continue making changes whenever you're starting to see symptomatic improvement in your body. And that being said, every patient's unique. And so most of the time, my plan that I develop with each patient looks different. So whether they're dealing with chronic headaches, we may be working in this regard. Maybe some are dealing with hormonal imbalance and we're working with this regard. So, this is where the unique, tweaking a plan of care is very different for every patient, which is why the time comes in. So it's not necessarily, this is why when I was in primary care, this is why this couldn't happen. I didn't have the time to really do that with every patient. And I also want to allude to, you made the comment about hospital care. I value and honor traditional medicine in such a high respect, which is where I'm so grateful for just my history with my career, recognizing the value of traditional medicine and the life-saving component of where that comes into play. It is so valuable, and we would not be where we are today as a society if it was not for that. So in no way do I want to dishonor that in my conversation about functional medicine or even my transition in my own career. There is such a time and place and held with respect in both regards. So,
for sure. And I think that's what providers, you're a medical provider who has practiced in primary care, who has worked in traditional medicine, but you saw a need to help patients more. And I think a lot of providers are seeing that in, physicians and PAs and nurse practitioners alike want to help their patients just more in a more complete fashion. And so whether that's, helping them along with their wellness and health and in a medical format as well. So it's taking a entire complete look at them, right? Versus just one or two aspects. And so, and so that's, definitely true. I think every one of us knows, medicine is important and has scientifically helped society in different ways. For sure. It's just trying to help our patients in a little bit more of a complete fashion sometimes, where we may not get that full look right in a 15-minute interview.
Right.
Sometimes that's what I'm seeing a lot of people coming and starting these new businesses and new practices, new clinics and things like that.
Right. And just that desire to go deeper.
Yeah. And so like, what was the moment in which you realized you wanted to create that business for yourself versus, like joining a different like clinic that may do something?
Sure. Well, that's a good question. I would say, I'm not sure I had an opportunity in front of me that was something I could just join or partner with. Like you mentioned that it's kind of up and coming and there's a lot of interest, but I do think it's still rare and somewhat unique, and it's not on every corner. And so, yes, there's a few people in the town that I practice in. There are a few people with clinics that are already up and running that maybe had I wanted to pursue that a little bit further, I could have. I think my knowledge is so new, and even just what I desired to do with clients is still developing. Maybe even in my own practice, it's still developing. Of like, how is this beneficial for them? Is it beneficial? Do I need to set it up in like a? Do I need to meet with them once a week? Do I need to meet with them once a month? Do I need to follow them for a year? Some of those like open-ended questions are still being developed. And so I'm not even sure I had the answer to those when I first started. Even I told you I've literally only been seeing clients since like May of this last year. So even since May though, some things have changed and some things have developed, and I've kind of learned more about how can this work? How does it work best for clients? How does it work best for me? How is this sustainable? Is this something that I can reproduce and keep going? Or is this so even some of those open-ended questions probably drove me more towards just doing it myself and figuring it out. And then maybe in the long run, it may be something that could be integrated or incorporated with another practice that's already in existence. But I did, and I will say this because you're medical in nature too, I took it out of like, it's more of a coaching practice as opposed to actually practicing medicine. And there's a lot of legalities that are accompany licensure and prescribing and things like that. And for the time being, it felt appropriate to just start as like a health coaching practice in business. And so I've enjoyed that aspect of it. I think, I don't know, that may develop over time too. That may be something that just as logistics fall into place, there may be some transition with that regard as well.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of business is you get to be creative, right? And, do things as you feel led and what's beneficial to your clients, which is kind of interesting. Just being able to start that and grow it and, be creative in different aspects. But it's definitely a learning curve, right?
For sure. And I think, as you mentioned too, I think there's a lot more interest with functional medicine across the medical field, even from patient standpoint. So what a business looks like, I think, is a developing idea as well, because I don't know, when I first went to nurse practitioner school, this wasn't even on my radar. I didn't know about this. I wasn't thinking about this. So I think there's a lot more questions on the table now, which I appreciate. I think the more from a patient standpoint, I think there's a lot more questions on the table, even from a provider standpoint. And I think one thing, back to what we were talking about earlier, just functional medicine in general, one thing I feel like I try to encourage my clients to do is that they're in charge. They are the ones that are in charge, not necessarily me. And I think that's a little bit of a different mindset from just maybe Western medicine in general. I think a lot of times patients depend on the provider to tell them what's wrong, to tell them what to do, to prescribe, to diagnose, and to kind of be the one in charge in the room. And my focus is to shift that, because I'm not there all the time with my clients, and they really are the ones. And when we're talking about lifestyle or lifestyle modifications or lifestyle being even the reason that maybe we are in where we are today, is there has to be a lot of self-ownership of why we got here, where we got here, how we got here, and then what can we do to make some changes. And so that transition from a provider being the one in charge in the room to really the patient taking some ownership and me just coming alongside as like a support team. Maybe my goal to educate, to inspire, to empower them to make those changes that they need to, but really giving them the keys to being in charge of their own health. And that's a little bit of an unlearning when it comes to healthcare. And
well, I mean, that point is really 100% true, because on another episode, I spoke with a PA and registered dietitian. She's both. And so she was saying with nutrition, because that's one of her main focuses, before, in her practice, is giving the patient the power to choose how they can change. And incorporate things into their life that would be sustainable. Because if it comes from us, it seems more like you have to do this. Right. And then the people don't want to do it. Or it's a challenge. But if it comes from within themselves, they'll take more initiative to make those changes.
Sure. More motivation and more. I love that. That's such a good perspective on that.
And so it's like 100% like exactly what you're saying is like giving the patient the power to make those changes and have that mindset that they are in control, because they should be making changes in their life themselves. We can't do it for them. We can advise, we can recommend, we can tell these are the things we suggest, but if the patient doesn't make those changes, then we can't really we can add another medicine.
Exactly. We can. And I think that's what, from a patient standpoint, they have to unlearn that too. Yeah. That's not what I'm going to do. That's not what I want to do. That's even not what you want me to do deep down inside.
You don't want to just add medicines.
No, because what kind of life are we setting you up for? Exactly. I don't want to set you up for you being dependent on medication or on me. I don't want to create a scenario where where I have to be involved. I want them to have independence and freedom to live the life that they want to live that is healthy.
I think that's like, kind of what public health, because I remember, when I did a master's in public health, I mean, behavioral change and creating that behavioral change is everything. That's the whole thing we're trying to do in health and wellness and medicine. And that's kind of just the basics of what has to happen. But it's how do we get those behavioral changes to be implemented? And so it leads me to this next question is like, how do we take those steps to change our habits, our mindsets? Have you found any key ideas of how you encourage patients or even yourself, how you've changed your habits and mindsets?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. Let's think. What are some specifics with that? I think what we've kind of alluded to already is that the change that we put forth in front of our patients or in front of myself has to be doable in the life that we live today. Now, maybe down the road, we can make some actual fundamental transitions in our lifestyle, but how can we implement small changes first? So I guess this might be the key to this is the changes have to be somewhat gradual. Whereas like small things where you can grab one idea and run with it at the beginning, because the moment you begin to see results, you're much more motivated to take on another idea or another challenge. So one at a time, slow things. And then the other thing I might say to that is that the mindset behind healing and the mindset behind implementing lifestyle changes has to be a mindset of belief. So I feel like mindset is a huge component, and a really big thing that I talk about with each one of my clients is that what you believe is going to work probably will work. What you believe is not going to work probably will not work. And so it's interesting, which goes back to another thing of like the patient is in charge. There is so much power with what they believe and what they are willing to try and put effort towards. And half-hearted effort is not going to arrive at the goal. And so, but if belief is not there that you're going to see changes down the road, it's really hard to give 100% if you're skeptical of it. And so,
that's very true.
Practical application is maybe starts with, where is your mindset? Where is your belief? Where is your fear? Where is your skepticism, and why? What do we need to talk about that can maybe undo or reverse some things that that have gotten you to the place you're at today? Because the road out of this does require belief. It requires faith. It requires you to make changes, but you can't just power through those changes. There has to be some belief that it's going to work before you can really have the motivation to do that. So that's a very broad statement to how do we change our habits. But I feel like it starts with mindset, and then the practical application has to be slow and usually small at the beginning, which is also where what I mentioned earlier is that the change is slow, because I'm usually not throwing 15 things at you at one time. I'm usually giving you one or two.
Exactly.
Because I want this to be something sustainable, that you're not going to throw in the towel 6 weeks into this and say, forget it, this is too much, too hard, I can't do it.
For sure.
It's got to work with your life and with your motivation, and you got to have the time and the energy to do it. And so, that's kind of a broad statement.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to simplify it, but it's kind of believing in yourself that you can do it. Right?
It is. Absolutely.
And that's sometimes the hardest obstacle to overcome, right? Is especially if we've journeyed through this, disease process for so many years and we haven't seen that change before, then how do we accept ourselves that we can change, right?
Right.
And believe that we can do it. And make those things.
And a lot of times patients have tried a lot of things, and usually by the time they end up maybe finding me, there's a lot of frustrations with, I've tried this and I've tried this and I've tried to change my diet, or I've tried to change my life. And so this is where I do feel like I've seen benefit from just being in the coaching world, is sometimes you just need a cheerleader or a partner or somebody that's going to hold you accountable to checking in with you every couple of weeks and being like, hey, how are you doing with the goals that we set? And so some of that has been part of the business is just a team member, a person, so they don't feel isolated in this journey, even though some of the things we may be doing, maybe they've done before, maybe we've tried before, but to have somebody in their corner cheering them on and holding them accountable for making lifestyle changes is a big part of that. So
yeah, for sure. I can definitely see how that's hugely beneficial, because I mean, in life, when we're doing things together, the excitement's there, the ability to have that encouragement is there, and you will finish something through when you have someone cheering you on the way than when you're trying to suffer through it alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We were designed to live in community.
Exactly.
That's the nature of God. So this is just another layer of how he brings people into our lives, because we need them. We can't walk this road alone. So especially a health journey, these are not designed to be walked alone. So there's a lot to that.
Yeah. And what are some tips to create like those healthier lifestyles?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say one of my best tips is to slow down. Usually I think that the pace at which we run is is not real compatible with a healthy lifestyle. And so if there's any way in which, any measure in which we can find the ability to slow down, typically the positives always outweigh the negatives with that, whether it is saying no to something that we don't have to say no, that we can say no to, you know, offloading a little bit of our schedule usually allows a little bit of margin for sleep or rest or time with your family or the ability to cook a homemade meal. Or, you know, I think if we can generalize slow down, then we can put a lot of practical application into creating margin in our lives that allow us to build healthy practices. And then there's so many things I could fill in the gaps. You know, what does it look like to eat a healthy diet? Well, talk about confusing. You can get on the internet today and find whatever you want to. If you want to justify anything, Google it and you'll find it. But my typical statement about diet, which I'm not a dietitian, I don't claim to be the expert on this, but my goal with every one of my clients is to teach them how to eat whole foods. What does it look like to eat things that are not processed, to eat things that our great-great-grandparents would have recognized? That is not something that's been made in a lab, but that is what I consider whole foods, which that's kind of a broad term, but so that's one statement. You know, prioritizing rest and sleep and our nervous system, learning how to relax, those types of things, which, as I mentioned, this is such a broad thing. I think that the overarching statement of where can you slow down? And if you can, make that conscious choice to slow down, because then you can add in healthy lifestyle choices whenever there's margin in your life.
Yeah. And I mean, as you said, I mean, every patient is different. Every person is different. And so their individual needs and the individual ways that they can do that differs from, and so you can't compare it to everyone else. And so that's why, definitely, as you said, sounds like a broad statement that, you know, but it's kind of what they can incorporate and make those changes themselves.
Yeah, what that looks like. And I think taking judgment off the table is a big thing I always try with my patients. Is most of the time, by the time people get to me, they're feeling pretty bad about where they're at, or have kind of beat themselves up. And so even just removing stigmas and letting all forms of you should be doing, or why haven't you done this, or you know, sometimes taking that off the table gives a lot of freedom to you know, this is real life, and these are hard journeys that we're walking. How can we help ourselves, motivate ourselves? Where can we make changes that are practical, that we can be proud of ourselves, you know, whenever there's like small things that can happen. So sometimes that's the first job that I have, is all judgment out of the room. Let's just talk about real life, and how do we incorporate certain things into real life? We're not snapping our fingers and have a different life. Yeah. So,
exactly. I think that's the hardest part in this current life, is we want this like future technology of like instant everything, right?
Instant. Exactly. We do.
So, but it's like a slow process. And I think it's also, I mean, just breaking down the stereotypes of what perfect should be, right?
Yeah.
And that will also help with our taking away the judgment, because then you're like, well, that removes half the battle there.
Right.
You know, when you like remove the ideals in your head that you think is supposed to be versus what actually should be, you know.
That's good. Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. This is where the modern day world that we live in is, we have access to so much information that it can become very idealistic, and the goals can be very high, because we see it. We see other people supposedly living this, you know, whatever it is, Instagram worthy lifestyle that feels very unreachable to all of us. And so I think we have to consciously break down that stigma of what is the goal? Where is the goal for me? And what is the goal for you? And how do we take practical steps to get there? Putting aside some of these maybe more idealistic, romanticized ideas of even health, even if we're talking about health, what does that look like? Well,
exactly.
Maybe the goal is to like be able to play with our kids.
Exactly.
And so what can we do to take steps in that direction as opposed to, something else?
Yeah, exactly. It's just enjoying what we have, our families at this moment, and how can we better enjoy that?
Yeah.
And what's hindering us from that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Perspective is a big thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, we kind of talked about this, but yeah, we're definitely too busy and sometimes too stressed. And then even in medicine, like as providers in our clinics, did you ever feel like that? You're like too busy, too stressed, and just like, how did you deal with that?
Absolutely.
I mean, I guess you got out of it. So
I said, I'll see you later. I'm going to go do something else. Yeah. No, I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer that question. I'm not sure I've conquered that battle. Yes, I encountered that battle for sure. I think the world of COVID was an interesting world I was working in person when COVID happened and then quit right then because I didn't have childcare anymore and life happened at that point. So, and I've been doing telemedicine ever since then, even in other capacities before this started. But, so I feel like I've somewhat been out of the grind of what primary care was like, or what even some of the multiple practices that I've done over the last many years have looked like. I've somewhat been out of that for the last several years, but there's a lot of stress with that. There's a lot of expectations with that. There's a lot of requirements and I don't know. I might throw that question to you. You're probably better at that than I was. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like too busy and stressful. But I think like, we need more providers who have that like compassion to stick it through and stuff. And so, but I'm glad that like you haven't left medicine completely.
No.
Like some people are like just leaving medicine completely. They're like, I don't want to deal with it. It's too stressful. It's too busy. I just can't deal with it,
I know. And I hate that. I think burnout is a real thing. One statement I might make, and I feel like I talk about this a lot outside of what we're talking about here, but is to try to control the things we can control and what we cannot control, learn how to let go of them. And I think that that's whether that's real applicable in your job or as a provider, maybe not, but what are the things I can control? And if there is something I can minimize or de-stress or simplify or create margin, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to focus on that. And then other things that I can't control, I'm going to learn how to weather the storm or learn how to let it go or learn how to not let it influence my peace. And I think that's true across the board whenever we're talking about life in general. But even in a busy medical practice, I think that can be it too. What can I do? What can I control? Let's work on that. And then outside of that, I'm going to learn how to rest.
Yeah. It's so important. Difficult to do at times, but those are actually exactly what we need to do is, and, even if it's just creating a way to work in medicine, but kind of go with the flow of your family and lifestyle, like you like what you did, and there are, different ways to implement change that would be better for our mental health, stress, and lives and stuff. It's just finding those ways and trying to incorporate something healthier for us too.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I try everything on myself before I recommend it to anybody. So I'm like the greatest experiment out there. What can I do to de-stress my own life? How can I minimize things? How can I prioritize the things that are bringing good? And how can I slow down? That's like I'm always asking myself, is there something I need to say no to that I'm not saying no to? Or where can I create margin in my life? Because this is what I'm preaching to other people. So
exactly.
Am I living it or not?
Exactly. It's like, yeah, you have to kind of live out what you're recommending to other people too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That is the truest experiment.
So, what are some other things that you do for patients in your functional medicine practice that benefits them more than what you did in the allopathic practice?
Yeah. Well, gosh, I do feel like the approach really is different, even from the interview all the way to developing a plan of care to following up with them. I think probably the biggest difference is that it's rarely are we talking about what medicine they need to take or,
right.
That's just not a topic of conversation. That's really very, very low on the totem pole. Usually it's what kind of foods do you need to eat? Are we getting enough water? How much sleep are we getting? So I think the approach to what we're talking about is much different than it was when I was in kind of an allopathic practice. And then maybe the other thing is just that it's developed more as a coaching where I follow up with them a lot. So it's something that they know they're going to hear from me in a couple of weeks again, and I'm going to check in, and it's going to be more of a relational type situation, which I love. And I think that's probably part of my favorite part of this is every client becomes a friend and, we get to kind of just do some life together and kind of weather some of the storms together. And I get to be a little bit more involved with the ups and downs of what happens that creates symptoms and what can we do about that? How can we, and even just the dialogue, I feel like I'm so honored by the honesty that people come to me with. I feel there's some very vulnerable moments that I feel really honored to be sitting in the room with. And even that is just a place of reverence that I don't take for granted. But I do think it's much more in this type of setting than it was in some of the other practices that I've worked in, probably because of time, feeling rushed or having to get to the end of a conversation quickly. This feels much more relaxed and much different for me.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I feel like medicine, you're seeing people in their most vulnerable state in the first place. And, you see them almost at their worst most of the time, especially in hospital medicine or the medicine that I work in. But, but for you to say that you can even delve in more into just those vulnerable moments where they're being so honest with you in what they need and what they need out of and their better health and wellness is interesting too.
Yeah. It's an honor. It really is. I have felt that way in every job I've ever had, but this probably takes it to another level because I worked hospital for several years too. I know exactly what you're talking about. This is the hardest moments of some people's lives is when you're in the room, and it's a place of a reverence, I guess. I don't know of a better word, but it just feels it feels very honoring to be there and to be held with extreme reverence.
I understand because I mean, you're having an opportunity to be a part of their story in a moment of absolute dependence on others. And so I think that's one of the beauties of medicine that we do have an opportunity to be a part of is being able to be a part of people's lives when they need it the most. And so I think that's pretty amazing and something we don't take granted for because we all know that.
Right.
And so how would you encourage those listening to help patients if they are providers? So encouragement to those who are providers.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel like probably from perspective and having that listening ear for maybe a little bit of a deeper meaning. I think sometimes patients, things slip out sometimes that might be lifestyle things or forms of stress that maybe that's not why they're there to talk to you, but probably when they are being open and honest, there's some things that come out. And I think from a provider standpoint, just being willing to go down that road with patients and say, especially if somebody's asking questions, I think when patients are ready to find a little bit deeper level of health, they're going to start asking the questions, and probably you're the one they're going to ask. And so even just like being willing to, or having the knowledge that you need to be able to have a little bit of that conversation, or to open the door for further questions, I think is probably just a suggestion. I think I know there's so many time constraints and even legal constraints around what you can talk about and how long you can talk about it and when you can talk about it and things like that. But even just slipping in encouraging tips and tricks, I think is valuable and is relevant. Even if you don't have an hour to talk to the patient, maybe you just have 5 minutes, but what could you educate them regarding sleep, or regarding stress reduction, or regarding hydration? What can you do that maybe they've never known before? I think I'm learning that some in my own practice. Is I didn't know people didn't know some of this. I think sometimes I take for granted that people know the importance of sleep, or the importance of diet, or the importance of nutrition, things like that. But I think a lot of people don't. And so it's even just some little simple tricks that you could speak that I think are caught by those people that are really seeking and listening.
And trying to get them to figure out a way they can implement it from their own way of thinking, then they'll implement it.
Yes. Self-motivation and encouraging. Be the one that's their cheerleader, as opposed to getting onto them for whatever the lifestyle that they are. I think we as a society beat ourselves up all the time. And so if we as providers have the opportunity to flip the switch a little bit and just encourage people in what they are doing that's healthy, sometimes that may be all they need, is just a little bit of, a pat on the back, or pointing in the right direction and saying, you can do it. I believe in you. And so sometimes people just need to be believed in.
That is so true. And how would you encourage those listening on finding their healthier self?
Well, I feel like a broken record a little bit. I think I've said it in multiple different directions.
Exactly.
But, I've said it even about my own life. I think I always try to slow down when I can slow down. I try to just do an internal gut check. How am I really doing? Am I stressed? Am I overwhelmed? Am I running on fumes? And if so, what can I offload? Is there something I can take off? And then making sure that I am prioritizing my health. I think especially as moms, especially as providers, sometimes we're the ones that get put on the back burner, but recognizing that when I'm not in a healthy state, I'm not showing up for my people the way I need to show up. If I'm fatigued every single day, if I'm dealing with a headache, I am not going to be the mom or the wife or the provider that I want to be, that I want to show up for my people and my world and my clients the way I want to. And so even just recognizing that it's okay to put yourself on the priority list, maybe even more than you ever have before. So I think recognizing that when I am taken care of, I'm able to take care of other people too. So I heard something just this morning. I'm probably not going to say it quite right, but it was talking about letting your cup run over, which the scripture that talks about letting your cup overflow. And I think so many times we talk about pouring out versus overflowing. And I think the difference between overflowing means that my cup is full first and I'm overflowing to those people versus when I'm pouring, I have the capacity of emptying myself out. And so if I can even shift the perspective to making sure, and this goes along with just filling myself up in time with the Lord and making sure that my soul is in a good and healthy place, I can be an overflow versus when I'm constantly pouring out, there's rarely time to fill up. And so you run on empty and then you run on fumes, and that's when you get sick. And so, it becomes somewhat of a vicious cycle. So even just my encouragement to all out there is make sure you're on the priority list, because you're worth being on the priority list.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Erin, for coming on the podcast with me. And I really enjoyed our conversation. It was so awesome. And really always so nice to reconnect.
Always is. Thank you so much. What an honor for you to have me on the podcast.
Yeah,
thank you, Joanna.
Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for listening. I hope that you are able to spark hope in your families, in your communities, and find that way to overflow with the goodness and the good things inside of you into others and be able to spark hope wherever you go. Thank you so much. Hope you listen in next week. Thanks. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Medicine, Motherhood, Missions. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and a sense of connection in the stories we shared today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners like you. Follow us on Instagram for updates, free downloads, and to join a community of like-minded individuals passionate about making a difference through medicine, motherhood, and mission work. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Until next time, keep sparking hope, keep healing, keep nurturing, and keep making a difference. This is Johanna signing off from Medicine, Motherhood, Missions. The medical opinions expressed on this podcast are for the informational purposes only and should not be considered as medical advice. Always consult a licensed healthcare provider for personal medical questions or concerns. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast host.